absence of care in a culture, in my culture, and the absence of love are strongly connected. Never do I, in these meetings and in these research plans and proposals and grant applications, do I hear the word love. Sometimes I hear the word care, but so sometimes I see the word care, but I never feel it. What would it even look like to have technology that wasn't based, or robots specifically, based, what if they weren't based on efficiency, productivity, optimization, but they were actually, their whole motivation was wonder and awe and invoking a sense of magic in a person.
Following is a conversation with Madelaine Ley. Madelaine is a philosopher and writer. She has done PhD in philosophy and ethics of technology at Delft University of Technology, exploring the ecological, political, and technological complexity of our time. Currently, she is lecturing at Delft University on responsible AI engineering ethics and art, empathy, and ethics. This is Sanjeev Ranjan podcast, and here is Madelaine.
Hi, Madelaine. Welcome to my podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Could you please tell us something about your professional background? What kind of studies you did? What kind of projects or practical projects you handled?
Yeah, definitely. So my professional work is a philosopher, and I like to start by saying that that's my job, but this is something is sort of a personality or a characteristic or a character that started from, I think, probably when I was born, and especially in my upbringing. So I'm raised by two artists. My father's a musician and a painter, and my mom was into film and a television producer, and then she became trained in theology, was a minister for a while, and now is working as a poet and a writer. And in this house of creativity, there was a lot of political conversation and encouraged questioning of how things are. Should the government work this way, and should we have churches, and what kind of education would foster a sense of care and connection in the world? So these are sort of normal dinner table conversations in my house. And so there was always this spirit of questioning and curiosity, which is, I think, probably how I ended up becoming a philosopher. And so my training is in philosophy. I'm now lecturing at the Delft University of Technology and York University's Engineering School in Canada. So that's online, as I'm in the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. And I'm in this unique position of being a philosopher, but I'm situated in two engineering schools. And so I'm always working with people who are in engineering and design, bachelor students and master's students, and trying to work with them to explore questions of ethics and social significance and moral significance and this is important. So what they're working on, so in their research, what are they building, what are they designing, what are they researching? But then also, I always pull this in, is I really want to foster this practice of reflection, because they're not only researchers and builders, but they're also citizens and people walking around in the world with their phones and using computers and wrapped up like the rest of us in digital technology. So it's both fostering this reflection on what they're doing, but also just how they're being in the world as a digital citizen. So I'm teaching, lecturing there, and then also, this is important, that work's only part-time, and I'm really exploring lately what philosophy can be outside of the academy. And so that includes writing, poetry, facilitating, advising, and consulting, and then also lately I've been, and I think we'll talk about this a little later as well, but I've been hosting these gatherings, these beautiful evenings at the Oude Kerk, old church in Delft, where I live. And the point of these gatherings is to it's like public philosophy, so philosophy, art, and contemplative practice, and collective reflection. And the idea behind that is that philosophy needn't be part only just sort of the university or in a textbook, but it's something that we can do together in community. And it doesn't have to be recorded or online. It's like an in-person thing. And that our practices of reflection on, how can we and how should we be in the world can be best done when we're together in person. So a lot of things.
Yeah, indeed. It sounds like you are really involved in quite a lot of things,
Yes.
and that's I find quite impressive. And that makes me think, what keeps you going on this journey of philosophy or philosophy related other works. What motivates you most on your journey, which keep you connected deeply with philosophy?
Oh, it's such a beautiful question. What keeps me going is, I think this long-standing way of being in the world that's filled with curiosity and looking at, asking questions. And I love hearing students' ideas and their writing, and everything is so inspired by the engagement and the relationship. And maybe it's interesting to tell you, I cannot believe that I ended up at a technical school. And I would say most of my friends and family are genuinely confused at the fact that I'm teaching engineers, because I'm trained in philosophy all the way, quite interdisciplinary. So some like bioethics and neuroscience. I'm sort of like a collector of things, of disciplines. And then, but I guess I always think that comes under philosophy. And, but the reason I ended up at a technical school and an engineering school to do a PhD and then now as a lecturer is because I'm not totally interested actually in technology or like a specific technology, although I have done deep research on specific technologies. But I'm very interested in how humans connect with one another and how we care for one another, and how humans understand themselves as ecological beings. So how we're able to connect and care for ourselves and the world and the more than human life in the world. And so what I'm interested in is, how does something like a technology, a smartphone, the computers we're using, mostly recently I was doing deep research on food systems, technology and food systems. And what I'm really interested in is, yes, the technology, but mostly how a technology integrated into our lives, how that shifts our relationships and shifts our ability and capacity to care for one another.
Quite interesting. So, how do you define care?
Yes, so I usually employ a definition that is by Bernice Fisher and Joan Tronto. And these are two care ethicists. And this is a definition that's, really widely used. And you'll hear why in a moment when I say it, because it's super broad and really vague. So it's everything we do to maintain, continue, and repair our world so that we may thrive, survive, and thrive in it. I'm pretty sure I have that right. And when I was doing my research, my doctoral research on care, I went through a lot of definitions. And what I was drawn to about this particular one is that it's so broad and it's so vague, which is why it has quite some critique. So maintain, continue, and repair is a lot of things. But what I think is really powerful about this field of philosophy called care ethics is that it takes seriously how much care is infiltrated sounds so like militaristic, how interwoven care is throughout a whole culture and society. So sometimes if you think about care, you might think like a parent sitting beside their child, when the child's sick or can't sleep, or you visiting somebody in the hospital, or helping somebody across the street, something like this. These are all activities of care. But what care ethicists do in the field of these sort of care ethicists within the field of philosophy is really try and conceptualize care beyond those like typical stereotypical visions or images of it, and look at care as could be like care in policy, for example. So the parental leaves you have, or the sick leave you have, could be something like the infrastructure, like the voting system and accessibility to be able to vote. It could be a teacher's care for their students. So what I'm trying to say is that it could be you caring for your bicycle. So looking at non-human objects, or even you might say inanimate objects, if you're not an animist philosopher. So really just extending this viewing. And I'll just end this by saying that there's another reason why I chose the vague definition, which is that I'm a little suspicious of definitions in general, which is a little bit risky as a philosopher to say. And because philosophers in my training in Western philosophy are sort of obsessed with definitions. You have to get your definitions right. I'm not so sure you always need to get your definitions right. I like to have them a little fuzzy around the edges so we can play with language and understanding a little bit easier, so it's a little bit softer. And this definition is so big and broad that I think we can really play around with what care might mean.
Yeah, true. So, how do you see its relationship with love itself? Is care the base for love to flourish? Are they both complementary? How it's different from love?
Ooh, another wonderful question. These are big ones. That's interesting. I think in some cases, I'm resistant to linking them up right away, because that is sometimes what can happen is that care and love can be conflated. And I'm not sure that we need to have love to do care properly. And a lot of care ethicists would agree with me, but I'm just going to keep going in the podcast with, what I think, not always linking back. So I think that, for example, like a government policy on sick leave, maybe practically we just need to accept that that's not inspired by love, but something like practicality about people's need to be able to care for each other. And so we don't need to have love there. But if I'm putting on that's like sort of the practical side, where I'd say, well, we don't need to have love. But I think in my heart, and if I was imagining something more ideal, I would say that while they needn't be linked, I think the absence of care in a culture, in my culture, and the absence of love are strongly connected. And that if you had more, say, climate policy, for example, if you had more climate policy, or think about like a political debate that was infused with a sense of love a little bit more, then certainly they would also be more caring.
Yeah, means I completely agree with this, because I think like if the policymakers who are doing things out of care for the society, uh, if they do not actually are loving towards people, then probably going to create they are not going to give their best while caring the society. So
Mm-hmm.
probably for the best care to come, which we always see from generally from mothers come, and they are kind of epitome of care. They are mostly quite loving.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of something I was thinking of recently and I've been working a little bit on is that, as I mentioned, I'm working at these engineering schools and I got a lot of research meetings and conferences and these sorts of things. And what I find is that I'm surrounded by enormous ideas about what are we going to do about climate change. And what I find is that I'll be sitting in an audience or in a meeting and I'll hear these really big ideas about something like geoengineering, so the mirrors that reflect the sun back, for example, or, reorganizing the whole water system, something like this. And never do I, in these meetings and in these research plans and proposals and grant applications, do I hear the word love. Sometimes I hear the word care, but sometimes I see the word care, but I never feel it. I have not once been in a meeting where I really felt the person have this deep sense of care or reverence, which I think is a really important one, reverence for the planet that they're purportedly trying to protect.
Yeah, could it be that love and care are probably the same thing, but people use care in formal settings and they keep love more as a personal affairs in the society, but probably uh, probably both are same things, because the definition of the care which you just mentioned at the start of the conversation, if you think in terms of love, then probably love also do the same thing, like repairing, continuing, and those things. So probably just um, probably these two are probably the same thing, but it changes because if society differentiate it based on the formal or informal or personal or professional contexts.
Yeah, it's possible. I should say that care is something that at the beginning of my research project, I really had a lot of challenges, including care in my work, because people thought it was interesting. People thought it was too much to ask for. That people would say, like, well, if you're doing tech ethics, like, can't you focus on privacy or transparency? Which is
Mhm.
like, I don't know. So, it's measurable. It makes sense. It's a buzzword. All of these things. So, and I said, no, like, care is relevant in food systems. Of course it is. And so I would say, like, had I mentioned love, I really don't know if it would have worked out. Like, I think that maybe that would have been rejected, but I did use care. And we should just say that care is not also something that is seen to be, because it is at times immeasurable and doesn't make sense. It's not transactional necessarily. It's not something you can put on a graph, although there are all sorts of ways to research care that don't include these things. But people
So
were really resistant to it.
yeah, just one idea popped up when you mentioned this, that probably love with more boundaries are care, and love with least boundary is the spiritual love or compassion, and the normal family love is with some in between boundary exists. So if we keep on changing the boundary of the love when it's unconditional, then it probably converts into a spiritual love or compassion for humanity.
Hmm.
And then if we put some boundary there, try to limit it, then it comes for your family or your closed relationship. And then if we put even more boundary on the same love, then it becomes care, and then that term care could be effectively used in the professional context without people getting uncomfortable.
Yeah, like maybe what you're describing is like when you said spiritual, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's like love, like boundless love, it just sort of seeps into everything. And I think I would say I really don't think that care and love are the same thing. I'm not a philosopher of love. It's an intuition here, but I think they are separate, but they're often wrapped up. I think that you can, if you're loving someone or something, you're probably caring in some way. And then, so that's great. But if you're caring, you're not necessarily loving. And then what I think is so interesting is what, as you were saying, which is why I am interested in aspects of love and care, is that it's so murky. Like there's not that, it's not like a clearly defined feature, because of course you said love in the family. Well, some families aren't loving. So, and we shouldn't pretend that they are. And some mothers aren't loving, and we shouldn't pretend that they are. So that those sort of ideas of and ideals and stereotypes of things, well, in reality, really sort of what shows up in reality is actually more complex, because we're humans and we're never fitting into these perfect definitions and boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, these are not like scientific terms which could have a measurable or a fixed definition, and we can just define it based on our logic and something, but without a concrete a fixed definition. It's open for interpretations and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to improve or increase care in the society, in between people, in between nationalities, in between different groups of people. So there are many division exist based on wealth, based on other criterias, like in India it's for caste system. There are different division of people, and then there are based on language in different parts of world. How one can increase care where in this divided world or divided society?
Yeah. I think the way that I go about answering this is through a conversation about attention. Yeah. And one thing is clear, which is that you can't care, and maybe you can't love either, but you can't care if you haven't been attending to whatever you're trying to care for. There's a great there's a great term called care, or it's a great term called care washing, which is a riff on greenwashing, and it was termed by the Care Collective. And you'll see a lot in sort of marketing. Care became like very buzzy around the pandemic. And so you'll see a lot of companies will say, like, we care for our customers, we care for our employees, we care for this, we care for the climate, blah, blah. And they don't actually have any thing to back that up. They don't have any accountability or measures or plans or anything. It's sort of like just a feeling. And so what's important is that, care involves an action, but also to get to the right action and to get to the right interaction, I should say. You need to have a relationship. Like you need to, or you're already, we're already always in relationship. We need to pay attention to those relationships. So when you're asking this great question of like, what could we do to increase, or maybe not increase, but like nurture care, is that people need to pay better attention. So we need to pay attention to what we're caring for or who we're caring for, because we need to see what they need. And so what's really cool about this is that you at the very beginning, before you start acting, before you jump to solutions, which many of us are urgent to do that, we have this real sort of urgent to fling ourselves into solutions, is to pause and slow down and actually just don't do for a minute. To actually just take our preconceived notions about what would be helpful or what would be useful and just put those aside for a moment and really just be with whomever we're wanting to care for, and have a better understanding of our relationship with this person being. And so I think cultivating an awareness and ability to first notice what our preconceived notions are, and to have the ability to sort of put them aside for a moment, and really just meet the other with attentiveness. I think that would be the very first step towards more caring society.
Yeah. And how about technology? What's the role of technology in improving or or decreasing care? What do you think that what's the current state? Is technology more improving the care in the society, or nurturing the care in society, or it's decreasing the care? And what it would take, what kind of technology we would need, or what kind of technology we should discourage to align it more in nurturing care in the society. So yeah, so
Yeah, this is so I think that there's a lot of ways we might say that technology is really helpful in terms of cultivating care, making new possibilities of care. I live in the Netherlands. My parents live in Canada. I have 2 children here. They're able to have conversation and over video, and I'm able to video my son's walking for the first time that day, and then able to send it over. So there's this real possibility of caring. There's also possibility of caring for global politics in a different way that we might not have had previously through newspapers or something. There's a sense of being up to date, and that can be obviously help us have a relationship with people across the world and important issues. But I started with the positive things. And I would say that in general, I think that digital life, as many of us are living it with our phones and with our constant ability to communicate, 24-hour news cycle, emails at home, work emails at home, these social media platforms that sort of infiltrate our lives in these, and with our, you want to have things viewed, and you want to have likes, and you want people to comment on your stuff. And I genuinely think that all of this is something that erodes care in a few ways. One is that there's this constant stimulation. We're sort of overstimulated via digital technology, so that we're sort of depleted or exhausted from this overstimulation, and so not really able to pay deep attention. So we're getting this kind of pew 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 pew, really fast information and lights and lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like getting too much indulge in technology is reducing care, but having a moderate use of technology or sensible use of technology, then then it probably helps in improving care.
Yeah, I guess so. But I would say that that's very simplified.
Yes.
Really simplified, because to say that you could cultivate a moderate use of technology in digital life would be is actually really complex, because the technology is not meant for you to have a healthy habit of it. It's specifically designed exactly for you to have an addiction to it. So
Yeah, and that's why I added the word sensible also after moderate, because when I said moderate, it was in my mind, okay, but moderate means what? It changes from people to people. Then probably sensible is more appropriate term, like sensible use of technology. Then one person is aware what he is using and how it's going to impact, and to what extent one have to then use it, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's important not to put the emphasis on individuals and their use. Like, I think that at the end of the day, it is a lot is up to you because you're not being helped by the powers that be. But there needs to be a sort of widespread social collective response, perhaps governmental, but I also wouldn't necessarily trust that too much. But maybe a wider movement to shift how technologies are used, or which technologies are allowed, and then also maybe a call for a different kind of business model for big tech, so that they don't have. Yeah, so the whole point isn't just to keep people on their devices.
Yeah, and the most strange or the big obstacle in implementing this kind of solution will be that there is another set of people in our society who really love being more engaged to technology, and they boast about like they can handle it very easily, and they don't want to decrease it. They can, it suits their personality. It's like that. And then there is other group of people which we just discussed, that they feel overwhelmed with excess use or something like that. And that I see as that this kind of movement in society is only going to gather people from one type of group, and the other group will be still criticizing that movement. Oh,
Yeah, I guess so. I think also the people that say maybe there's enough research now that shows, for example, the effects of social media on teens, for example. There is a loneliness epidemic in the Western world. There's enough information to show us that this is a bad idea, especially as children are growing up with it, right? Like the kind of use, the kind of constant stimulation and connectivity with, say, a smartphone and all that has to offer is clearly bad. But what I think is really interesting too is to really question this reliance on external validation of what most people already know in their bodies if they paid attention for just a moment. So yes, there's sort of scientific evidence to show that people feel more anxious and more depressed the more they use the social media platform, for example, especially teens. But and that's great. I'm not against scientific inquiry, but I think that we also like know this. You have like an evening in the dark, scrolling on your phone, and then you shut the light off. Like if you paid attention for a moment, you notice that doesn't feel good. Your body doesn't feel good. And if you're, constantly checking your email while you're walking down the street, you know that you feel like more stressed and anxious. So I think it's also important to encourage people to also clue into their own internal knowledge. You don't have there. It's good that there's scientific research on this, but also I just, encourage people to actually just listen to their own intuition and their own bodies on this.
yeah, means that's indeed very much needed in the society. And but at the same time there is another perspective to it, that these technologies generally create depression because it's and they are not thinking of its bad impact on the society, or they are just designed for to fed the obsession of the people in certain directions, like in on Instagram, for example, people always put their favorite mood or their best moods there. They do not paste their loneliness. So of course this other person who will not be doing that, he will feel depressed. Oh, I'm not doing that, and that person is having such a great life. So other solution for this another solution for this problem could be to develop such a technology which actually helps people to uplift each other's mood rather than downgrade it. Uh, and uh, and the main challenge to develop this kind of technology is that to create a technology which is benevolent also for the society and interesting also, because generally things which are very interesting for society, those are not that those are not that good. And this is the real and one of the complex challenge for the entrepreneurs or inventors in the world. If they can somehow develop those kind of technologies which have both nature benevolent and interesting, then nothing could be better than that. So this could be another solution for the same problem.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it's definitely a challenge because so many people have, most people using the internet today are used to a kind of like grabby headline thing that you can click on. So something that's more moderate is something you don't click on as much. And even I, who am really reflective and critical of how I use technology, like I love I don't even want to say when I was in a deep YouTube rabbit hole about some celebrity downfall the other day, and I was like, what am I doing? I was so tired, and I just got really deep into it, and I thought like, oh wow. But then the headlines are so catchy that you just kind of like keep going, and they're recommended to you, and sort of that's how it goes. So encouraging people to have a more moderate uh more moderate use is definitely a challenge, and to make it interesting as well. But I have seen a lot of like encouraging pieces like slow AI, and which boring AI. So it's like not exciting and innovative, but maybe very useful. And so it's not like flashy technology, but it might be based on something like maintenance instead of innovation. And then also, I think there's like quite a lot of movements with the younger generation going back to flip phones. So actually, I think what is not talked about enough is the possibilities of opting out of certain technologies. So there's a lot to say, like people say like, oh, you can configure your phone so it's darker, and you put time caps on certain apps and things, but you could also go back to a flip phone. I'm not saying that we're going to go like I don't think it I'm not imagining a world without the digital technology, but there are certain pieces that you might just not use. And I think that's not said a lot. People don't talk about just not using certain things.
Yeah,
Maybe because
yeah.
it's very
Generally,
interesting, but
yeah. So yeah, that's the problem with the world, that they won't believe something until they see a proof. And the proof for if so that could be another solution, to build a kind of technology which can ask them questions or assess their mood or emotions after surfing a certain website, so after different websites, and then it present them a report. Okay, these websites, after going through these websites you felt great, and after going through other set of websites you did not feel great. So as a proof, means in quantifiable, like this much hormone, and then people will some, not all of the people, but more people will be guided towards using benevolent websites, which does mostly good to them rather than bad. So yeah, so quantifying things in terms of evidence or proof or some measurement is also going to probably help here.
yeah, I guess it does help because we live in a world that really likes to have things quantified and be able to like put on graphs or infographics, something like this. And I guess I sort of like begrudgingly submit to that because I think that we have a lot of information that doesn't need to be quantifiable about this. But yes, I admit that that would be useful. And I would also say, like, so, and also in education, there's a sense that like sort of technology is just propelled so fast, so quickly, and then education is catching up to it. So I think that there's some like more, if we could integrate throughout elementary school, like really at the beginning as well, and then certainly high school and university, as sort of reflect. You want students to have, you could call it something like critical reflection on your technology use. And so that's why I said at the beginning that I'm interested in how the engineers are building and designing the technologies, but I also really want them to think about how they're using the technologies in their life already.
Yeah, yeah, you just bring out one of the very important point that when the people are very small, at they just started their first standard or in the first few years of studies. If some like there are courses about what is moral sciences and those kind of courses which I went through when I was small. In the same way, there should be now a course on responsible use of technology, and then all the how to use it responsibly. What could be its bad impact in this case? What could be its good impact if they use responsibly, and those kind of things. And that's also one of the very good solution for this kind of problem.
Yeah, and I think so. I am teaching these kind of courses now, and especially the one at York University is on digital citizenship. And what I think is important, as speaking to teachers and researchers, the people who are leading these kind of courses, is that there might be a tendency to fall back on your own training and education. So to give the students a bunch of theories, like philosophical, ethical theories and frameworks. And while I think that might be important if they continue on in this field, I don't always think that it's important to laden students with like Kant's deontology or the depths of utilitarianism, although that one might be pretty useful. But so what I'm doing in the classes is, yes, I'm weaving in theories, but I really wanting them to reflect on their use of technology and to do something like experiential learning. So what you're saying about being able to reflect on, how do you feel after this? How do you feel after this? Using this site, for example. So that's what I'm doing each week. They have a practice to do. So it's not just theory, but also practice based. So for example, I have a recorded meditation where they can walk around the city. And then it's like I don't know what to call it. It's like a meditation, a guided walk, maybe audio walk, where they can walk and see how much digital technology is in their lives. And then they can go back and journal on it. And that's an assignment. So these sort of really tapping into what their actual experiences of the technology, I think is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And after this discussion, it feels like in our courses, in the future school courses for children, then there are more courses going to be how to use technology responsibly, how to retrieve the right content from the technology what they want, rather than having the actual subjects, because children can find actual subjects like mathematics and content for all of that online. And but then what is left after that is how to get the right information in the right way and how to use technology responsibly. So I think that's how our future school system is going to look like, or future course books that will be mainly about this thing which I just mentioned, rather than having the real content, because content is already available on the internet, and right references and right use of those content, or those are things which will be taught probably in the schools.
Oh, so interesting. So it's like the interpretation of or like how to. Oh, it's like sort of how to learn and how to critically think about the subject matters. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just at a conference this week. It was a technology and sort of social thinking kind of event, and there was so much talk about AI and AI for good, AI for social progress, AI, and everybody has the same kind of narrative, which is like we have this technology, and everybody has this sort of slogan in different words, but the slogan's always like, we have to act now. We have to act now. And the idea behind that urgency is that technology people have this sense that we're sort of on the edge, on the precipice of huge AI development. And so we have to act now to get the sort of social thinking and the AI for good infiltrated into the system so that then it can be beneficial instead of terrible.
Yeah. Just to add, it's like technology is growing much faster rate compared to how society is growing.
Yeah. So it's like that's definitely part of the whole narrative, which is like, it's going so fast and we're overwhelmed and we don't know what to do with it. And in some sense, that's correct. But I find myself so allergic to these concepts of AI. Everybody's throwing around these words like good. We have to have technology for good. We have to have technology for the right thing, and to all of that. That narrative is not new. That has a deep colonial history where technology and progress are interlinked, and the colonizers who violently colonize a place say, we have the technology, we have the electricity, we have the building infrastructures, and we have the water systems, etc., that we're bringing over. And if you and phones and etc., 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 we have all these civilized technologies. Also, we have the weapons. We have the advanced weapons. So we have all of these advanced technologies, and if you don't get on board with progress, which includes incorporating those technologies, then you're left out. You're not part of what's happening here, and you're going to be pushed aside forcefully, violently. And so I think, I never hear or hardly hear people talking about that aspect of things, which is this language of progress and forward that has a bloody history. And so when people start talking about progress and forward thinking, and we need this technology for this, I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah, and I think in one of my previous podcasts, I already discussed it with that we are using technology but on wrong goals because of the capitalist societies to make maximum return on the money. And instead, what we need to do to use technology on the right goals. And what are the right goals? The big pressing goals, for example, climate change and other social problems which are at their limit or at the boundary, and we need to take immediate action on that. And those are the right goals companies should choose. But yeah, this capitalistic economy is making everything messy, all the chaos, creating chaos. It's not structured, because its structure should have been to handle the high priority socio environment problems first, and then go towards the less priority things. But everything's just capitalist economy comes, and it just changes whole this priority level, and then it solves one problem and create 100 more problems while solving that. And then this cycle, never ending cycle, is just keep on going on. So yeah, that,
Yeah.
that that's the wrong happening with the world.
Well, I think we come down to the big C, the big capitalist problem, which is such an important thing. Like I always tell my students, follow the money, follow the money, and you'll have a lot of answers about sort of the ethical, social aspects of a certain technology. And what I think is important, you said that certain values, or I don't know how you worded it, but like certain motivations for technology, and a lot of them. Well, I think I don't know, most of it most of it or something, majority of is driven by profit. And then I say like the efficiency and convenience are like the muscle of profit. So that's the promise of a lot of technologies, is that you're going to have a more efficient experience and you're going to be able to optimize your life. And I just heard a student say something. I was like, no, but they were like, we need AI so we can be more productive and optimize our days. And I was just like, you're not a robot. You're not, please remember that you're a human.
Yeah. So and that's the actual problem. This perspective to optimize our life, individual lives, and not to optimize the world life or earth life. If it's about optimizing the earth overall, holistically, then they will always choose the right problems to solve. But it's always about optimizing a narrow for individual, which is a subset of world, which is a bit narrower subset. And that's where all the problem in the world is coming out. All the money is going in the random directions, some in the good direction, mostly in the bad directions. And we are just running like machines to solve. Oh, this is the new problem coming, we have to fix this now. But they did not think that if they would not have implemented the previous solution, then probably they would not have to think about solving this problem. This problem would not have arisen, means.
Yeah. I think, I was working with somebody recently, Bram Allens, and he's a Dutch artist. He does really, really provocative work with robotics. And him and I were having a conversation recently, really brainstorming about this idea of what if you were, what would it even look like to have technology that wasn't based, or robots specifically, based, what if they weren't based on efficiency, productivity, optimization, but they were actually, their whole motivation was wonder and awe, and invoking a sense of magic within a person. And in fact, they were inefficient and unoptimized. And so the idea came from, Bram was telling me that, so a very long time, I think it was, I don't know, 800 years ago, is this story of this first robot sort of like an artistic creation. And the whole idea was that this robot was supposed to would recite poetry. And the whole point was to be able to sort of invoke and foster this sense of wonder for the world. And we were imagining, like, okay, what if you did a revisionist history and you went back to that point and you kept going, like, so that robots now were designed and were creatures in the world for wonder and awe, so that people felt more artistic and more creative. What would that look like? And what we came to is that we came to see that you would need a whole different world for that to exist. So it's not just about the robot being different, but technology is always embedded into the whole system. And so if we had robots for awe and wonder, it would also require a completely alternative universe. It was a great conversation.
I don't know. Means for me, it's I was actually, this point was going in my mind, not in the same way, but just a couple of minutes before, I was also thinking about discussing this thing, that when a universal basic income will be in place because of efficiency brought by AI, then people have to people will be left with less problem to solve or less work to do in their professional life. And then they can always, but they can always work on themselves, and to improve themselves. And that's according to also Maslow hierarchy, probably, if you have heard Maslow's hierarchy. And on the top of that, there is this self actualization and transcendence. That's after getting all the needs fulfilled, finally it comes, people strive for those kind of spiritual experiences of and awe. And these experiences I would also classify as one of the like a self-actualization kind of experience, which is like which makes us feel very grateful for something. After we feel that, we are very grateful for that because it's in our mind. It makes us feel very good for longer period of time, and we always remember those moments. So we can create a technology. When I was saying for benevolent uses, why not people put their whole effort to create these kind of technologies which can bring or instill a sense of wonder or awe in people, and and also maybe transcendence, maybe just uh, uh, those kind of higher spiritual experiences which can make them feel full of bliss. And then whole game will be changed. The same technology which is doing so much harm, it will be actually doing much more good to the people, and then this bad impact of capitalist society will be also compensated by the right use of technology. And then we won't be complaining so much about the capitalist economy also, because technology, right technology, can conquer the bad impacts of capitalist economy.
I mean, I love this vision. But I think I would say that what you are describing is an alternate world. Like the fullness of that change would be enormous. Even just universal basic income is even without all of the other pieces of the vision is a huge accomplishment. But I would ask you, like, who are you imagining make not makes from whom does this technology come from? Is this from the local collectives, from a government, from a well-meaning individuals all over?
Well, I was thinking to develop something like this myself in the past, but
Great.
but I guess everybody who really have a love for the world, not like for only for their family, but like that kind of spiritual or more compassion, that big-hearted love. I think all those people should create organization and should come together, collaborate, and try to think how to generate an interesting solution. Because if it's a boring solution which brings awe or this in people, or if it's a bit risky solution which brings these things, then also it won't work. So something which a solution which could be practical also, and at the same time it could develop these kind of feelings, and in the people, these kind of best feelings, because we are having all these material things, we are earning wealth, we are doing all these things to feel good, to feel that kind of feeling. But and if that's our purpose, then why we are taking this indirect route, that we will earn money, then we will travel the world, and then we feel some, then we may feel sense of wonder, or why don't we take handle this problem directly and create something some technology which just do that for us anywhere, anytime, 24 into 7, and then our then human suffering is decreased in the world, and that's the ultimate purpose of humankind, to decrease the suffering in the world.
I mean, yes, that does sound really good. And I think, like, what I do appreciate is that I wonder if there's a possibility for sort of local, like, you have a universal project, but it's created by local collectives, and then there would be local ownership. I think it would,
Yeah. That
or
will work better, because all the local things, they will probably feel awe or wonder in their local area in a different way than in other areas or in other countries.
hmm.
So it will actually, you are right that it's going to change from locality to locality, or tradition to tradition, different cultures, in between different cultures, and for each culture, how to get them that feeling of awe or wonder, only the locals can devise that or contribute to develop that.
Then there's something interesting here too, which is something I teach on as well. It's like technological solutionism, and I would say, you know, a lot of the times we'll look at some sort of what we perceive to be a problem in the world, and then think, oh, we should make a technology that will help this. And for what we're describing, like lowering the suffering, and maybe creating a sense of connection and enlivenment in the world, I would say for the most part, in my experiences, this is not technologically based. So so at the very beginning of the introduction I gave, I told you about these evenings I'm hosting in Delft, and there's no technology. I put people's phones in a like this like really ornate bowl and hide the bowl away so that people can't be near their phones. And we spend 75 minutes together, and there is a deep sense of connection that's fostered, but there's no technology. So I think a lot of cases technology may be helpful, but we also need to just open our minds to allow
Yeah.
for no tech.
Yeah, of course, it should be a collaboration of technology together with these in-person gatherings. Like you must have emailed the participants before they
That's
come to
true.
your church. So in the same way, probably we could just use the technology to find those kind of groups in the world which feel a sense of awe in a specific way, and then create different kind of subsets of the people based on different ways they feel that sense of wonder or awe, and then make them come together. And it could be online if they want to, or it could be offline if they are close by, they live close by. So yeah, means of course.
Oh, nice. It's like the global awe collective or something like.
Yeah,
Nice.
who knows, one of our audience get
Yeah,
inspired, or many of them get inspired, and then they approach, okay, let's make it happen.
perfect.
Yeah, so yeah, let's then think let's discuss about rupture, the concept of rupture. How do you define rupture, and why it's important for us?
Yeah, the concept of rupture, as I use it in my philosophy, is actually inspired by a French philosopher, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who's a French philosopher writing in the 40s and 50s. And the idea is that, so I use a lot of something called phenomenology in my philosophy, philosophical thinking, and that's basically like the philosophy of experience. So it's trying to say, you know, it's trying to get, although this is a bit tricky because you're inevitably writing things down, but it's trying to get sort of out of the intellect and the head and really think about how we are moving as bodies in the world. And what happens is in Merleau-Ponty, he talks about this experience, which we all know is that, you know, you have this experience of, for example, going to the same workplace, or maybe even more simple, like getting out of bed to the coffee machine. You like know the route. You're not thinking about it every morning. You're kind of like, and so the idea is that your active perception is just in, like, you're just like this, your perception's just in the background. You're not really paying attention to where you're moving and what you're doing. And then one day you might stub your toe, or somebody might have, like a child, for example, may have left something on the floor and you trip over it. And there's this experience of being of rupture, where you're brought, so what was once like this really smooth habit experience is now you've been sort of like halted and confronted and brought to attention. And this can happen not necessarily stubbing toe or tripping over a stuffed animal or something, but it also happens in our lives with our bodies. So over time, of course, you for example, like for me recently in the last couple of years, I've been pregnant twice. So moving with a pregnant body is so much different than moving with the non-pregnant body, and just sort of getting through doorways and things is a little bit trickier. So this idea that sort of bodies change over time. We're not always the same. We're not always stable. And so these moments of rupture ask us to sort of come back to attention, reevaluate how to move in the world. And Merleau-Ponty talks about this in terms of moving and the body. And I'm really interested these as like maybe, as I'm just saying this for the first time now, but like moral ruptures.
Or mental rupture, maybe on the mental,
Yeah,
not only body, but on the mental level also. Like just we discussed a feeling of awe or wonder.
yeah,
So that's going to bring a rupture in people's mindset, because after they will get that feeling, they probably are not going to be the same person. They would like to have that feeling again and again, and then they will approach things or see things from different perspective to get maximum of that wonderful experience of awe or wonder.
yeah, of course. And then, but then, of course, if you do the same experience over and over again, then that becomes habit, and you
Yes.
need to have the rupture again. So yeah, and so what I found interesting about it is, like you say mental, I would say like moral or maybe even spiritual rupture, where I'm interested in this idea of, and with digital technologies, for example, the way that they are designed is specifically not for rupture. So you hear the phrase smooth user experience, and we all know the experience of when it's not smooth and you can't figure out a website and you're really irritated, and this is very frustrating. So we all have this expectation that a website's and an application's going to be intuitive, it's going to be smooth, it's not glitch, like God forbid there's a glitch and you have to wait, or if you have to wait for something, you see like the color wheel, this is the worst. So these are all examples of like, we want a smooth user experience, but the smooth user experience, it means that somebody else is sort of designing your experience. Like somebody else, a corporation usually running on the motivation of profit, is perfectly designing for a smooth user experience, so that if you are embedding your life more and more minutes of your day to this smooth user experience, and not sort of getting out and about where you might trip on something or run into somebody you didn't expect or something, we're losing like spontaneity, which is a kind of rupture, sort of random encounter, synchronicities are lost as well. So I feel like there's two stories. One is that with this sort of, as I said, like giving your minutes into the digital realm, those are designed by somebody else, and they're designed for a reason, and they're designed usually for it to work so that somebody can make a profit from it in some way. There's different business models, but there's another. So those are trying to eliminate ruptures. But if you sort of opt out and you don't take your phone, for example, you don't take Google Maps to the new cafe in town. So, I'm not saying go on a big trip without your Google Maps, but if you don't take your Google Maps to meet a friend at this new cafe, and you look and you dare to walk 5 blocks without your Google Map, you might have a really beautiful, interesting experience that you wouldn't have had if you were looking at your phone saying like, oh, am I here? Am I here? Am I here? There's other ways to know you're here other than looking at Google Maps, which is to be where you are. So I think like then you can have these really interesting rupture moments where you're moving with your habit body, but then you'll be brought to attention by something that happens in the world. And I think those can be really magical moments of
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree that these kind of non-technological solutions are basically our traditional and ideal ways to get the experience of rupture. And when it comes to technology, then I'm sure that new technologies like AR, VR could also be used uh, if designed for rupture, to create rupture rather than decrease rupture. Then these kind of technology could also create that kind of environment, that kind of settings that people can feel some transformative people can have some transformative experiences. Rupture.
Well, there are so interesting you say that, because there are designed ruptures, which is the pop-up like thing that says 10% off whatever, like if you buy a second one, or a pop-up thing that says go to my, or subscribe to the list, or you can't go any further until you subscribe to my list. So these are designed moments of or they're the ads when you're scrolling through Instagram and then there's an ad suddenly. So there are ruptures, as nudge is another word for this kind of a rupture. It's to nudge you along to spend more money. So usually to spend more money to sign up for something, but usually the end goal is to get you to spend more money. And so those are already designed in the technology. But so I am wary also of things where you say, like, maybe there's a VR and you could design ruptures into it. There's something, I really do think there is possibility there. I think for sure, like, I use a phone with applications, and there's a meditation app and there's like a reflection app and stuff. It's like, I'm using this stuff too, but they're all designed still. So that is different than walking down the street without your Google Maps, because that's not designed, unless you believe in some sort of divine design. But if you don't, like me, it's like there's something spontaneous and random and exciting about that. Whereas what you're describing, like say with VR or something like this, that would be designed by a team of designers, and you would get the same prompt as your friend who also is also in the VR. Like like they're not spontaneous. They're specifically designed.
It could be made spontaneous, like there are several visuals in the world, and if a person is liking, if a person enters into VR world and he likes the current setting, and he says up somewhere button, or he says he is really liking it, then it will keep on giving continuation of visuals in that direction, which makes him feeling better and better and better, and then his experience is going to be different from other person experience, because other person can feel with the same visual, oh, I'm not good, I'm not feeling. So then he will be given a different subset of visual, and then a continuation of that until that person feel bored, then that will be changed. So yeah, that's possible
Yeah,
to
but that
bring
I
randomness in that design. That's completely possible, because all the picture, so when we go to forest ourselves and some random things happen, I'm sure pictures of all of those are available on internet, and if it's available on internet, then AI, like these kind of large language models or generative models, they can bring randomness to it based on users experience or preference.
Yeah, but I would say there's an important difference there, which is that and I'll allow the system to be as complex as I can imagine an AI system to be, but that means it still just means that it's highly personalized. It means that the VR, so we'll say VR, for example, the experience is highly personalized to me. And so it feels random because maybe I'm only getting the feedback, and nobody else in the entire world is getting the same feedback, because it's so complex and so personalized to me that only I could elicit such feedback. That's still not random. It's still designed. That's not random. It just is unique. Whereas if you're out in the world, spontaneity and randomness that means like the world, I am meeting the world. It's like it's a subtle, but I think it extremely important difference. Personalized is not the same, but it could
Yeah,
feel the same.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how things are perceived, most of the times that becomes the reality.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But then that makes me worried.
Let's yeah, so we were discussing about the sense of awe, sense of wonder, this kind of rupture, natural, technological, non-technological. But but the most important point which we have to still discuss, and that's about bringing the rupture, or bringing the sense of awe or wonder, which transform people for the good, which transform people so that they can come out of their limited beliefs, which transforms people so that they become more aware of their weaknesses, their bias in their thoughts, their wrong behavior, their wrong thought patterns. because and nature, of course, nature does that with a lot of people, but in not very safe environment. Many times people get very sick, they get very big, very acute disease or like cancer and that kind of bad disease, and when they recover from that, then they feel that transformation, because that was a rupture in their life, a big rupture, which disconnected them from the general belief of the world or the society. And then they recover from that, and they become more grateful towards nature or their surrounding, and they appreciate more small things, and they come out and they can identify their limited beliefs, and the things which used to overwhelm them, how petty they were. They have those kind of realizations, but that's not always safe, as we discussed. So yeah, probably that's one of the best use of technology I can think of, to create this kind of virtual experiences, so that people does not have to go through the harsh life experiences to get that kind of good rupture.
Yeah, and I think like life is going to happen to people, so of course they're going to go through breakups and sicknesses and these sorts of ruptures that can be more challenging, as you say, and there can be gifts in that as well. But I say that not discounting the real challenge of those moments. But I think what is nice is that what you're describing is that we shouldn't wait only until these moments of high crisis points in our life to work on, maybe, I don't know, work on is not the right phrase, like engage in
Self-development.
reflection and possibly in self-development, as you're talking about. So I think like the doing it as a more consistent feature of your life instead of waiting for these big crisis moments probably seems like not a bad
Yeah,
plan.
means and that I really like that sentence, more consistent, because probably if we do things consistently, then we do not need a rupture from the nature. So there is less likelihood for us to face a rupture if we are continuously improving ourselves. People.
I
So,
get that's true. That's true. I mean, it depends if they're like self-inflicted ruptures or not. But I guess we're all gonna get sick. We're
yeah,
all
yeah.
gonna like have trouble with our job. We're all gonna have trouble in our relationships. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how we perceive those things, it's
Yeah.
like 10% is the events which happen in our 10% or 20% is the contribution of the event which happens with us in our life, and 80% is how we respond to it, not react, how we respond to it. So yeah, means if we know how to respond in a better way, and that we can only know if we become better and better person with if possibly, if there is some kind of that technology is there which can help us to keep on improving continuously, then yeah, we are going to respond in a good way, and then yeah, all the bad things will also become good for us, because we will learn from it, and we and in future, if the same event will happen, we know how to handle it or even prevent it from happening, so in our life and in others life. So yeah,
Hmm.
bad things are actually good. It's all, world is all layered. Bad comes out of good things, and good things come out of the bad things. It all depends how maturely we handle those things.
Indeed, I think it's all tangled up and not easily put on either side. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, with this, we are already at the end of our conversation, and we discussed a lot of variety of topics, and we went quite in depth of some of them. So, do you have some end pointers to our audience?
Oh, yeah, I'm really sort of, I don't love giving like a key takeaway or anything like this. So I would just invite your audience members. There was some point in the middle of our conversation I was talking about this aspect of coming into sort of active attention with the world, and that's something that can foster care and maybe even love. And so I would say go for a walk without your phone and have a really sensory rich experience. So listen. That's an easy way to do things, is like listen, look, feel, taste if you can, smell. By sort of like kind of settling into our senses, I think that that's a real way to reconnect and build relationship with our environment.
And also, all of you guys can always join your group.
Yes, sacred sessions in Delft, they're called.
If you are in Netherlands, then I highly recommend to experience the sacred sessions in
Thanks.
Delft. It's organized in a church, right?
Yeah, it's not religious, so I should emphasize that. But it's in a church, and there's actually a few other cities that are in discussion of hosting them there as well. But for now, it's in Delft.
Yeah. And also, I suggest all of the audiences, if they want to make some kind of groups to for whatever we discussed during our conversation, to use technology for good or technology plus non-technological ways, feel free to comment or connect with us. I will share our details at the bottom of our conversation in the description part. So yeah, Madeleine, it was very nice having you here on the podcast. And yeah, whenever I discuss something with you, it always broaden my horizon of thinking. So while discussing with you means a lot of new things always come up in my mind, a lot of better ideas, better thoughts, better definition of care I just evolved while discussing with you. Okay, a limited love is care. Or a less love is care. And that's what I felt myself. And that's all possible because of the in-depth discussion with you. So thank you very much for giving me new perspectives.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You are welcome.